With no machinery or earth movers available, people dig with their bare hands, searching for signs of life under the debris. 4 villages in the Zendajan district have been almost entirely destroyed. Taliban officials say the 6.3 magnitude earthquake has killed more than 2,000 people, destroyed at least 1,300 homes, and left countless others injured. On Saturday, the United Nations said 320 people were killed, but today's announcement by the Taliban makes it one of the deadliest earthquakes to hit the country. While the critically injured were taken by helicopter, ambulances ferry hundreds of others to Herat's main hospital. Medical services are stretched to the limit.
The injured have been transported to the hospital by the government and Herat private ambulances. They have been receiving first aid. The hospital gave them medicine and medical kits are available for them. Unfortunately, we are still receiving injured people from the centre and surrounding districts.
The natural disaster is yet another misfortune for some of the poorest people in the world. Aftershocks have forced people to stay out of buildings. And so far, there has been little to no help from the international community. And with each passing moment, the hope of finding anyone alive continues to fade.
Disaster struck Sikkim in the early hours of Wednesday. A cloudburst triggered flash floods. The water flowed down the Tista River. It was flowing at over 50 kilometers per hour at some places, bringing calamity to those caught in its fury. At least 14 people have died. Many more are injured. Over 100 are still missing. This includes over 20 members of the Indian Army. Search operations are underway. They're expected to last a while. The true extent of casualties won't be known for a few more days at least. About 25,000 people have been affected by the flash floods. Meanwhile, about 3,000 people are stranded around the state. Many of them are tourists. Rescue operations are on. Over 150 people have been rescued. The floods were unsparing. Water from the Tista tore down trees, cars, houses, and anything else that got in its way. The greatest damage may have been to Sikkim's power sector. The flash flood destroyed a hydroelectric dam, the Tista 3 dam in Chungtang.
There are 2 bridges. They are gone. That road there, that too is gone.
The disaster unfolded because a glacial lake burst. It began at the South Lonak Lake in North Sikkim. Glacial lakes form when glaciers melt. The melting water begins accumulating and forms an unstable lake. They're especially unstable when they're as high up as the South Lonak Lake. Often, these lakes burst. That leads to flash floods like the one we saw in Sikkim yesterday. Lonak Lake burst after heavy rains caused it to overflow. The effects of the disaster aren't limited to Sikkim. Further downstream, the state of West Bengal is also dealing with the aftermath. Some residents have had to evacuate their homes. It will take a while for things to return to normal, but these disasters are likely to become more common in the days to come.
Nestled in the Kalamoon Mountains, the Syrian town of Rankus used to be known for its fruit and vegetable farms, livestock, and delicious honey. That's until nearly 12.5 years of war ravaged the country, prompting a dire humanitarian crisis and economic collapse. Parched lands have now joined the list of Syria's woes. It's one thing to lose your country to war, but losing your fields to climate change is a whole different kind of challenge, says the Syrian beekeeper.
I had 110 beehives before the crisis in 2010. Now I only have 40. Due to the difficult circumstances we face, such as war and climate change, in addition to economic inflation, I'm afraid to have to abandon my profession after more than 40 years of work.
It's a concern shared by many other Syrian beekeepers too. The price of a kilo of honey is about $10, a terribly expensive affair for most Syrians these days, consumers and producers alike.
The climate is changing, which is not favorable for beekeepers. This year was cold, and snow and hailstones fell during flowering season, whose nectar the bees feed on.
Ordinarily, the weather in this part of the Damascus countryside is conducive for farming. But unusual weather conditions are slowly destroying a once thriving agriculture sector. Semi-arid fields have taken the place of lush apple orchards that were once here.
On top of the bad economic conditions and the high cost of living, the climate also fights us. This year, all crops were damaged by sleet. I lost most of my trees. I have only 400 trees left. I'm afraid to lose them as well. Because of this desertification, we will also lose bees.
He says that when trees and flowers disappear, bees can no longer feed or pollinate and migrate elsewhere to survive. Farmers here can barely afford to tend to their beehives and farms. The Red Cross helps keep them afloat with small donations.
Syria is one of the countries most affected by climate change, desertification, lack of rain and water scarcity. All of this has affected agricultural production, which decreased by 50% during the past 10 years due to the conflict, and climate change has exacerbated the problem.
Struggles like these are becoming a stinging reality for most Syrians. And with the added challenge of climate change, the situation only seems to be getting worse.
7-metre-high waves pummeled Taiwan on Thursday as Typhoon Koinu struck the far south of the island, bringing record-breaking winds of 340 kilometres per hour. Debris was strewn across rain-drenched streets. The strong winds were sustained and unpredictable. Electricity lines were downed and littered the roadside. Nearly 330,000 homes are without power.
There was an outage, then another, and then another. Then there was a loud bang. That's when the power poles fell. The wind was big, very big, and terrifying.
Taiwan experiences frequent tropical storms from May to November. There was another typhoon just last month. The climate crisis has made the storms stronger, with their direction harder to forecast.
We often get hit by typhoons, but this one was just too big, and it lasted for a long time, a really long time, like 6 or 7 hours, with continuous strong winds. We were petrified.
Most shops and schools were closed on Thursday, but the island's capital, Taipei, was not affected and was operating as normal. People in the affected areas are returning to their homes and businesses to clear the damage caused by Typhoon Koinu. The storm is expected to weaken as it moves towards China's eastern Guangdong province.